atua, kua tuwhera e tēnei hui, e tui te karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ātākura, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. Well, welcome everybody to today's Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. As usual, please let myself or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend to leave the meeting. Morning tea will be at 10:30, and we will just make sure that we are looking after each other today, and if we need to have the odd break just to catch up with things that are happening. Everybody's had a very busy couple of days, so I understand that it's a little bit hard to have amendments ready sometimes when we've got that sort of workload. We'll just now move on to apologies. So I have apologies for Councillor Paul, and I've got a possible early departure from Councillor Fitzsimons. Are there any other apologies? Okay. Well, Councillor Pennant possibly as well for early departure. So do I have a seconder for those apologies? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Free. So we will now put that to the vote. Oh. All right, so that's carried. Are there any conflict of interest declarations for this meeting today? No. Okay, confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that Strategy and Policy Committee approve the minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meetings held on the 29th of October and the 4th of November, that they've been circulated and they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Matthews, and we'll now put that to the vote. And that is carried. And we don't have any items not on the agenda, so we're going to move to public participation now. So we have some Evans Bay Parade residents. Chris Calvi-Freeman has applied to come and talk to us today with some of the residents, so if you'd like to come up and join us at the table. So thank you very much all for coming in today. And so, yeah, you know how it works. I think we might need to just give a little bit of flexibility around time if we have some extra questions. Cool, so I'll let you get underway when you're ready. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Arthur Clapp, and I'm one of the residents of Keo Bay. With me, I've got Chris Calvi-Freeman and Tanya Devereux, and we are speaking on behalf of all the residents in Keo Bay. We'll be speaking about our concerns regarding the safety of the proposed tahi-tahi cycle path alignment in Keo Bay.
Right, right-hand button, is it? Cyrus, is it the right-hand button that we push?
What does he point to?
You point to.
He's pointing probably that way.
Stop the clock.
Just wait.
Need a little triangle, ding.
It does work. Hang on. That's working, Cyrus.
Is it?
Yep, right-hand button there. Yep.
Right. So we have a very simple or straightforward request, or two requests. First is we call upon the Mayor and Councillors to instruct the Chief Executive to place an immediate hold on the proposed cycle works at Keo Bay, pending a review of the options for the work at that site. Secondly, we ask that the Mayor and Deputy Mayor meet urgently with the officers and the affected residents and develop an alternative plan for the cycleway works at Keo Bay that is safe and appropriate for the site. So it's a big call, but it's incredibly important. Here are our reasons. Keo Bay residents are supportive of the proposed tahi-tahi cycle path. In fact, as per usual, I cycled on it this morning, and so I'm a regular user of it, both as a runner and as a cyclist, as are many in the Bay. So we're not opposed to what is happening. We are scared. We are scared for our children. We are scared for our grandchildren. We are scared for our parents, our visitors, ourselves. We are scared for the service people who come to our houses, whether it's with waste management, paper deliveries, or the gas meter readers who have to go stand on the road in order to be able to access our particular point. This is not a frivolous exercise. It has the full support of all the residents affected. So that's from 218 to 226, and it also has the support of the rest of the Bay. If you've ever run around the bays, you'll know that we have a very active Bay that is both positive as a community, but in this instance we have a very serious concern. The possible consequences of implementing an unsafe plan lies with you, the councillors, so we ask you to make a big call. Just to remind you, this is the project. The section around Point Jerningham has been completed. A surprise to us was that they then moved on to the section that starts from Niwa and goes around Keo Bay and Weka Bay. However, what has been done so far is outstanding, and we do want to see something similar to that in our bay and all the way through. However, critically, there has no consultation taken place with the residents of Keo Bay apart from some communications with numbers 220 and 224. Though I'm the most affected, or our house is the most affected in terms of the safety, no one has rung me, no one has emailed me, no one has knocked on my door. We've sent multiple requests for a consultative meeting where we can find a consensual approach to solving this issue. We have had that has not been done. We did, after sending an email to the councillors in our ward, Sarah and Sean and Terry, and they did respond quickly, and we did have a meeting on site that we really appreciated, but nothing has resulted directly in terms of communication and sitting down with the council since. The Mayor has responded to emails but has not intervened or visited us. It took a Lagoima request to start to find what the details of the plans were, and we feel, or we suspect, that one of the reasons why the meetings was never held was because the plans didn't exist. A recent leaflet to the residents included no plan or details of the proposed works. So I'll hand over to Chris to actually talk about those concerns, safety concerns, and why we have taken this approach.
Thanks, Arthur, and thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the south end of Keo Bay. This is our 4 houses there. That's a photo looking towards the airport. You'll note the low-level walkway, which is relatively underused, a bit analogous to the low-level walkway round at Point Jerningham before it was fully developed. This is the safety zone you can see in the foreground. That runs all the way along the landward side, and this is crucial for letting us get out of our garages without getting hit by fast-moving traffic. Of course, it doubles as a cycle lane at the moment. Next. The plan for Keo Bay, you won't see the details there, but you see the big curve. Now, that's a blind curve to the south of our properties that traffic sweeps around. Look, our concerns, Evans Bay Parade carries 11,000 vehicles a day. It's a lot of vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, dangerous goods vehicles, et cetera, taxis, and people sightseeing and not looking where they're going. The scheme is being shoehorned into the existing road space. No seawall is proposed at Keo Bay, whereas at Little Karaka Bay and Ballina Bay, there are seawalls proposed. Now, this shoehorning of the scheme there means the virtual elimination of the safety zone at the south end of the bay in front of our 4 properties. And with the fast and blind curve at the south end of the bay, we have just 36 to 40 metres clear visibility of approaching traffic. We use that safety zone to get out onto the road, and traffic comes past us, and then we can merge into the traffic flow. Without the safety zone, it'll be very difficult or impossible, or certainly dangerous for residents to enter or leave their driveways. That's what 40 metres looks like. It's a bit hard to see, but that car is following that van at a 2-second interval. That's a shot from my driveway with Arthur's driveway in the foreground. There is just so little time to see, and that traffic will actually be in that lane nearest us, not in that lane separated by that white line. So our concerns continue with the southbound bus stop being moved closer to our properties, and it'll no longer be indented. So impatient drivers will overtake the southbound buses at the stop by coming onto our side of the road near the blind bend. Not only will we have to contend with traffic coming from our right around the curve, but also traffic overtaking buses. So in conclusion, it'll be impossible to drive or reverse out safely from our driveways and impossible to stop in the traffic lane to reverse in. The City Council's known about this for a long time. I discussed this with David Chick. He said I was conflicted. He said, leave it to me, I'll sort it. This is 3 years ago. I did, and he didn't. The council has come up with some mitigation. They plan to remove at some considerable cost the big planter on each side of the driveway at 224, and neighbours peculiarly expected to drive across each other's driveways and along the footpath to come away from the blind curve. This is dangerous and illegal. Pedestrians will be endangered. We can't use the footpath as a high-speed merge in and merge out from traffic doing 50 kilometres an hour. Our domestic driveways will be chewed up by rubbish trucks, etc., and this doesn't solve our serious safety concerns. Our solution, and I put the solution a couple of years ago and I developed it further during lockdown, our solution is a length of seawall and to build on the existing seawall to create more space for the cycle path, the footpath, and an indented southbound bus stop. But note that the indented southbound bus stop would actually be on existing carriageway, so you're not talking about a huge, heavy piece of engineering. Retain most of the existing safety zone. You won't see the details in the plan. That's the plan I drew up during lockdown and sent through, and I'm happy to circulate that plan. If you look very closely in the middle of it, you'll see the, or you may see the indented bus stop. But it works, and I draw on 35 years of transport planning experience to make that claim. The City Council officers have objected all along, and they've dug their heels in. They've said it's not necessary, it's too expensive, the seawall doesn't need any work, so why should we replace it? And it'll require consent from our friends at Greater Wellington. Well, let's look at that. Is it necessary? Yes, it sure is. The City Council's plan is unsafe. WCC did a survey of just 50 vehicles, just a tiny proportion, showed an 85 percentile speed coming around that curve at 49 kilometres an hour, which is pretty fast. One vehicle passes our gateways every 5 seconds, city-bound in the peak. The proposed stop line from number 224, the sight line from there, is just 40 metres to oncoming traffic. That gives us just 2.88 seconds to react, or for another driver to react and swerve or stop. Now, if you look up, if you do any Googling, if you don't believe this, the stopping distance from 50 kilometres an hour on a dry road for an attentive driver, allowing them to react first, 35 metres. On a wet road, 41 metres, and that's with an attentive driver and good tyres. From number 226 Arthur's Place, the sight line is only 36 metres. Quoting directly from the Council's own report, 36 metres is not considered safe under the relevant standard, so crashes are inevitable. It's too expensive. I don't see any evidence. I had to Lagoima this. I see no evidence of any detailed work. They say a rough order of cost of 1.6 million. I say 300 to 600,000, and I can present those figures. We'll move on because time is going. The seawall doesn't need work. Well, I'll leave you that conclusion. No, that's all right. You can see it does a wee bit. But at the other end, in front of 226, it's solid, and it can be used. 226 it can be used as a base for a boardwalk. Now, you won't see a blue line there. Does it require GWRC consent? No, I don't believe it does. The high water mark is outside of the line of that work. So if the officers had done their work, they would have seen that it is on your land or our land, not on Greater Wellington's land. And our request, just reiterating what Arthur said, please do not impose on us or let the officers impose on us a dangerous, ill-considered scheme when there is an alternative. Thank you.
Councillors, I will allow some time for questions. I just think it's important that we get to check on a few things. So, sorry? Oh, it's on, I just hit it too low. I said I'll allow some time for questions, given that it's quite important that we do hear those. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor Free.
Oh, look, I just wanted to question how much interaction you had with the officers, because I had thought that they had been round to discuss, some of their proposals with you.
We have had officers come round on a couple of occasions. The most recent one was the implementation manager. She talked about the removal of the planters on each side of the driveway at 224, which is going to be a big job because they're full of statutory services: gas, electricity, broadband, moving a telephone, moving a power pole, etc., etc. I showed her the gradient at one place. None of those things will come together to make a suitable alternative where you can drive along driveways. Yes, Tanya.
Sorry, just to answer the specific question, there hasn't been properly all of the residents invited to a meeting and had a proper open discussion. There's been independent one-off meetings. There's been one where a couple of the councillors came and we appreciated the time. And actually, while you were there, you nearly witnessed a crash. So that was quite good for you to see that. But following that, they went away with an action to look into things and come back, and there was supposed to be consultative and further meetings, and those have not occurred, only independent one-offs with one of the neighbours, and then we're all trying to keep each other updated on what's happening.
Councillor Rush, you had a pass away.
Arthur, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, Tanya. You both mentioned the meeting that I did attend. Arthur, follow up. Are you aware that I gave Chris a phone call and gave him my thoughts after I discussed with officers?
Following on the same line as with Tanya, there has been individual follow-ups and we have appreciated what's happened, but we had a very simple request right from the start. Can we sit down with the council and talk on a consensual basis what might be a solution? We're not sitting here against the proposal. We're not sitting here saying this is the way we have to do it. We're saying we have an alternative, but we are open to sitting down with the council and looking at the plans and coming up with a solution that is safe. And that has not happened.
Chair, could I just also respond to Councillor Rush's point? Yes, I was grateful for your phone call, Councillor Rush. I didn't add it to the list because there's so many other things to say. But I think you said to me, how much do you really think the council should be spending on your driveway, or words to that extent? And I think my answer to you is, what value do you put on your family's safety?
Just one more question from Councillor Young.
Thank you. So you talked about the number of vehicle movements. Do you have any breakdown of the type of vehicles? Because I'm aware that, for example, the Crown cars always go that route. They're not allowed to go through the tunnel, and the trucks also go around there.
That is correct.
So, I mean, presumably, I'm not an engineer. Many other things I'm not too. But, I mean, a big truck is... I would have thought, cars are dangerous, but the big trucks, I would have thought, would be far more dangerous.
Big truck won't stop that quickly.
So do you have any idea of what the ratio is of cars to trucks to Prime Ministers?
This would be, these would be questions that your officers should be able to provide answers to. I mean, they only, of 11,000 vehicles a day, they only did a speed survey of 50 cars. What's that, 0.001% or whatever? I don't know about the breakdown of vehicle types, but you are right, Councillor, there are a lot of heavy vehicles coming around there, a lot of taxis, people going to the airport, tourists, etc. And they're all a mixture of traffic, and they're all a potential problem. And late at night, we have the boy racers coming around at very high speed.
Just to repeat, we're not trying to solve the problem here today. We want you to understand that there is a safety concern, that we are scared, and that is a legitimate concern, and we are asking for that meeting to be held that we haven't had.
Well, ngā mihi maha kia koutou. Thank you, Chris, Arthur and Tanya, for coming into kōrero with us. Obviously, we'll need to go away and have some conversations with staff about where things are up to, but thank you for bringing this to our attention.
And we do appreciate that you all got up after last night's...
Thank you very much, Chair and Councillors.
Thank you, kia ora. I'd like to welcome Darcy to come forward to introduce his E-petition on half-sized options for council rubbish bags. Kia ora, Darcy.
Kia ora.
Welcome. So you have 5 minutes just to speak to this. If there's a little bit of time for questions from councillors, that can be useful, and then we will debate the paper.
Fantastic.
Cool, thank you.
I'll be very quick and to the point. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Starting off with what you already know, we have a growing city and we have a rubbish problem. And this is a photo I took of a number of rubbish bags that get thrown out. So the basis of my petition was to introduce a solution where we can invigorate an army of many to help take care of a problem that we're all faced with, which is a growing rubbish problem. When we look at our, one thing I want to say right now too, the solution is this: introducing half-sized rubbish bags. And this has nothing to do with cost. This is to do with leveraging good behaviours and facilitating good behaviours across the whole of the Wellington region. And I know this from personal experience. What I do in my profession is I help organisations adopt a continuous improvement mindset where they study what they do and they make improvements. Now, too often people think this is about process and system, and that's where I play, but it's not. It's about behavioural change. And what is your point of leverage for behavioural change? So this solution, which was the basis of the petition, was based on what is the root cause where we can leverage the best behavioural change. So very quickly, when we look at the way goods are manufactured, it's pretty linear. We get stuff out of the ground, we create it, we package it, we ship it, we use it, and then we bin it, and we know this. And it's fraught with danger trying to make some changes to that system to reduce waste, and those dangers around bylaws, legislation changes with lobbying and all of that. So what we want is we want something really simple, what's often referred to as low-hanging fruit. And where that low-hanging fruit sits is in the usage of those products and how do we change the behaviours there. So the solution, quite simply, and I'm going to stand up in a second and show you, I brought along a couple of samples. It breaks my heart because I had to cut down one of my recyclable rubbish bags, but this is the size of your full-size rubbish bag. And what the petition proposes is something much smaller. Now, what this will do is start to drive the right behaviours. And how it will do that is bring a conscious level to the rubbish that we throw out. And again, I know this from personal experience because before I started the petition, I looked at my own rubbish over a number of years and how I could reduce it easily. And I went from 50 bags a year, which is 1 bag per week. For the last 3 years, I've thrown out 3 rubbish bags for each of those 3 years. So that's 9 bags over those last 3 years. Now, thank you. I'll take that, Andy. Now, this is not whether, excuse me, that's my phone reminding me that I've got a presentation with the council. You were running to time, thank you for that, and I'll also run to time. Okay, hey, look, the opportunity you've got, this is simple. This is a knock it out of the park opportunity because the way these bags are manufactured, they are the same all the way down. So it's literally this seal line at the bottom, move it up. There's no other system changes we need to make. This complements the smaller bag complements the current refuse collection system. We don't have to change anything else. We don't have to remove anything. What we're doing is we're bringing in a new product. The other opportunity that you've got on the front of these bags is changing what's on there. I know that you're going to do something really cool and you're going to beat Hamilton's 4-bin system that they're introducing. Your organic system, you can talk about it on the front of this bag. When I reduced my rubbish output from 50 bags a year to 3 bags a year, there was just 4 simple rules I followed. I won't go into them now, but you can put all this on the front of these bags. So it's simple, super simple. It doesn't change the system. It's self-advertising because those people who adopt these bags, everyone else will see them out on the street, especially next to those big wheelie bins, which surely you want to contest. It brings more relevance to what you offer, and it gives you an opportunity, if you so choose, to completely reinvestigate the pricing of rubbish. And it gives you an opportunity to start to market and to talk to your wider constituents. The last thing I'll say is I think your constituents are listening. I certainly am. Councillor Foon and Councillor Rush, I heard you on Radio New Zealand talking about the sludge thing. So people are listening and they want to have direction and they want to have options and they want to know where to next for them. Thank you for your time.
Kia ora, we do have a couple of partai which I'll allow Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, Darcy, for being such a great waste warrior. That's awesome. Look, a couple of questions. One is we know that unfortunately people are very sensitive to price, and when we look at our waste bylaw, we've got some evidence of that people have moved away from our rubbish bags to get a cheaper service. So is it your kind of contention that you're really appealing to the people who really want to do a good job on waste rather than the people who are price sensitive?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think price sensitivity comes into this. This is a completely different market. So talking about Radio New Zealand, I posed a question to Mr. Wallace that runs the panel, and he put it out live on air about using half-size rubbish bags if they were the same price or something similar. Price never came into it. What this is for people that just want to reduce their waste. The price difference for me between 50 bags and 3 bags a year, do you know what I mean? You could charge me double for those 3 bags and it still doesn't, in an absolute sense, I'm paying way less. So price doesn't really come into it. I think also in discussions with the likes of Grey Power, they see it as something for those that have disabilities or vulnerabilities in terms of taking a heavy rubbish bag out to the sidewalk. So the price is just, I don't think even comes into it. I think the market we're appealing to, or the motion and the behaviours we're appealing to, is so far removed from price. So thank you for asking that question. I think you're absolutely right. Price has got nothing to do with it.
And then the other thing is, I've been slaving away, now Laurie's doing it, about trying to get this organic thing off the ground, and so that everyone, we can have a 4-bin system or a 3-bin system too. Yep. So I presume you would support that, or at least would support some options which would allow people to home compost so they don't, fill their rubbish bags up half with organics. Yeah,
look, absolutely. And has this been turned off on me? Let's have a think. I've got my 4 rules. Nope, that's not working. That's okay. And the first rule is buy clean, and the second rule is compost or have a worm farm for buy clean. So buying clean means buy things with less packaging on them or no packaging. Yeah, thank you for picking that up, Councillor Young. So absolutely, this would complement and would be probably a great first intermediary step towards introducing that organic scheme. It's, hey, we need to get down your waste. Here's a bag that will do that for you. Now, guess what's coming next? It's the organic scheme. So this can be your intermediary step towards that. It's a nice filler and gets people starting to think about, well, actually, how do we fit this bag? Now, I've said half-size rubbish bag, but you can predetermine what size it is. So what you can do is do some calculations and go, if we can get every household down to their rubbish being this size, and it might be around about a half size or a 3/4 size or whatever it is, but if we can get it down to this size, then it's going to be really great for, the amount of rubbish we throw out, reducing it. Cool.
Well, kia ora, Darcy. Thank you very much for coming in to present your petition. And I'm now going to hand it over to Councillor Foon to introduce it. So thank you for coming and joining us.
Ka kite anō.
Kia ora. So over to you, Councillor Foon, to introduce the report. We're just going to adjourn for a couple of minutes just so that Councillor Foon can work out. She's got an amendment to put to this. Thank you.
would like to introduce this paper on the E-petition for half-sized option for council rubbish bags. I have had a chat to Darcy, and I really, Darcy, want to commend you for being an engaged citizen and going through your own process to work out, you know, what you can do better in that space. What I was talking to Darcy about before was, you know, would you call yourself a zero waste, you know, a guru or a hippie? And Darcy is not. He is a citizen who can see an opportunity to do the right thing. So, and that systems approach to behavioural change is massive. So what you've outlined, how to systemise it, is a really useful understanding for us to have. We've got a lot of information coming in. So thank you for doing this work. Thank you for designing a half-size rubbish bag prototype for us. If you could send that through, that would be also, if you could take a photo. I tried to get a photo of you presenting it, but I would really appreciate that. And Darcy is right, we need to produce less waste and throw out less rubbish, and half-size rubbish bags really do encourage that behaviour. And in fact, some extreme zero waste folks only have a compost in the kitchen because that is the only place that you've got to throw rubbish away, and it makes you push out all of the other unnecessary rubbish. While we understand that's not practicable for most citizens at this time and place, having the visual option of a half-size receptacle, whatever that is, really is encouraging. However, I do support our own team that we do need you know, just in the process that we're going through, that we need the other ways to divert waste so that people have got the other option to put their, I want to say resources, but I'll say waste so we understand into. So I thank the officers for their response. Darcy, I thank you for this today. It is really great to have you in and have this. Actually, one other thing I wanted to talk about was Darcy talking about our positive, you know, the opportunity on the rubbish bags to talk about what we want to do. And that's genius. You know, we've got some free advertising space right there where we can encourage our citizens, step 1, step 2, step 3. So I'd really like to take that forward in some way, shape or form. And I think Wellington City Council, we can be a bit bolder about our aspirations, and especially as we know that it is critical that we get sludge out of the landfill so that all of these things that are suggested to us, we can really understand and take them on. And I just want to bring up that Hamilton City Council have got their own Fight the Landfill campaign going at the moment. So that's the extreme of where we could actually be here. So I think being bolder about helping waste minimisation through statements on our collateral that we're using is a really great thing to do. So kia ora, I move the paper. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Kia ora, Sarah.
And the reason I wanted to second this is I've actually have suggested it before, but I've always been told that it wasn't going to work. And what I think is brilliant about what we're seeing today is the point that you can just make it shorter. So it actually does look to me like it's actually completely doable. And I love the idea of not necessarily charging less, actually, but it can be something that people just aspire to do, can even try every now and then. Maybe there's times when you won't need to put out a full rubbish bag. You can have a little selection and you can just slowly work your way down to working out how you can put out less rubbish. I think it's pretty good. The idea also of having information on it is genius, and especially on the rubbish bag you could have information about the recycling, because another thing I tried to do was to get a sticker put out that people could put on the inside of their recycling bin so they actually knew what they couldn't put in the bin. But we never managed to get that done. So I think this is something that really could be given a serious effort. The only thing I would like to ask officer advice on is whether February 2021 is very ambitious, given we've got a huge program and summer holidays, and our staff do need to take annual leave. So I'm nervous about approving this with a specific date like 2021, which is, we know how busy our staff actually are.
terms of us reporting back on the feasibility. If some pilot scheme, the recommendation might be to.
So you're happy
I'm
with
comfortable with the
this?
timeline.
Okay, that's just excellent.
All right, we are going to try and keep this moving. I'm sure Councillor Pennant, you'd like to speak to this?
Yes, and I'd like to thank Darcy too. Thank you for being such a waste hero and just for coming, and hope that you'll feel that council does listen and we've picked something up. Look, I have discussed this with officers before, and they raised logistical issues and also costs, because people are price sensitive. 60% of Wellingtonians do not like our service, and we will be discussing that in the next paper, and use a private service. However, I was convinced by what Darcy was saying about appealing to a particular market, like the people who, and things have moved on in the last couple of years, people are more conscious about their waste. So I think this will be awesome. It was me that suggested the February 2021 date, just to get on with it, because, and also what I liked about Darcy's comments was that it will start getting people to think about, okay, so I can't put it in this bag, so can I go and buy a worm farm, or take it to my organic materials to the community garden or whatever, and we know that that's what a lot of our rubbish is made up of. So thank you so much. It's lovely to have citizen engagement to do something positive, as we will hopefully be doing in the next paper as well. Thank you.
Councillor Calvert, I think, has a question for officers.
Yeah, I really want to test officers' advice on the doable date, the February 2021. Mr. Williams, I know you've said that you can do that by February, but are you absolutely certain? Because
I think we have to take the word of, he was very clear, and I don't think we need to cross-examine.
okay, all right, I'm not going to cross-examine you now, but
Be good. You can have an offline conversation, but we're all a bit close to. But yeah, I think we've had enough reassurance.
okay. So I might just speak to this.
Okay.
I accept the advice that we've had from Darcy, and I think it's a really good idea. I can't accept to get officers to come back to us in February 2021. We signed up to our priorities and our action plan for this current financial year. Our officers have a lot of work on, and we still have to debate the waste minimisation bylaw, and that's going to generate a lot of work for officers as well. I feel that this is too much of a stretch, given that we're already mid-November. We are going to enter into Christmas period and the holiday period, which will then take us through to the end of. The end of January, and we're asking for this to come back to us in February 2021. It's not a lot of time, and given that our officers, if you've seen the work in the waste minimisation bylaw document, you can see how much work has gone into that. And not only has the work gone into developing it, there's actually a huge amount of work to need to implement it, and we keep fragmenting our services and our officers' time. So I agree with the sentiment. I agree. I would be comfortable if they had to report back to us by the end of June. And if they can come back sooner, then that's great. But let's put a realistic timeline in this. We've stretched our officers a hell of a lot in the last 6 to 8 months, and I would much prefer us for something like this, that if we're going to have a sustainable solution going forward, if it to be longer. If they can come back sooner, then that's great. But I would much prefer a longer date. Otherwise, I just can't support that amendment.
All right, so I think that's everybody on the speaking list. Laffoon, would you like a right of reply?
No.
Let's vote. Oh, we're going to have to take them separately. Yeah, okay. And we'll take a division on, we'll take a division on number 2. On number 1. Number 1 was to receive the... Sean left because he wasn't prepared. Okay, now we'll vote on number 2. And that has carried. Great, thank you. So we will now keep moving. Yeah, we may need to adjourn a couple of times just because there are some amendments and people haven't really had a lot of time necessarily to think this through. We have an early morning, oh, there's no morning tea there. We could do that. Let's break now for morning tea. So we might actually, what we'll do is come back at 10:30 and then it gives us a chance to get sorted and hopefully it means the debate's a bit quicker. Thank you. So we are now moving on to the solid waste bylaw adoption, item 3.1, and I'd like to hand over to Councillor Foon to introduce the report.
It is my pleasure to move this huge piece of work that has taken months and months and many, many hours to this table today, and is to ask this committee for the adoption of the solid waste bylaw. I'm sure you've all enjoyed the many hours of reading it and the detail that I know that you're all over. But I do just want to do a few thank yous, and definitely to our team, Emma and Emily. It is very precise work, and I think that you can be really proud of our team and what they are putting forward in this bylaw today. I also want to thank Councillor Pennant for your work in the past and doing this great mahi to progress the immense challenge ahead of us. So thank you for all of that. And also thank you to all of the submitters who came along, and I think we had approximately 152 or 162? 166, thank you. Whereas some of our counterparts had one submission. So I think that just really shows you how engaged the Wellington community is and how intimate they are with the waste situation for our city. This bylaw, so just on coming into council, as you had parking, Councillor Condi, I was issued with possibly on my first meeting, oh, and we've got a bylaw for you to work on and bring in. So not being a lawyer, I can totally assure you that my heart fluttered a teeny bit. I do wish I'd done the law degree now. But actually, no, I didn't need to. We've had such a great team of people on this, and that's what, yeah, no. Great. This bylaw is unique because it's regional, and I think that's the other, thing we have to recognise, that Wellington is in a unique situation of collaborating with 8 other councils from the Wairarapa to Kapiti to get consistency in our bylaw. And there are many good reasons why we want consistency, but one of the best one is that, an obvious one is that we can provide a good service to streamline to the many waste operators around the region. This bylaw is about reducing, as well as good management, it is also about the key waste minimisation attributes, and that is what has excited me so much about this. And just a few of those are the waste operator licensing, which will enable us to collect data so that we can understand what is going to the landfill, so we know where to invest in diversion and circular solutions. Waste management and minimisation plans for events and new builds, and identification on receptacles will enable us to do better litter management in the central city, which is at this stage costing us around about $500,000 just to collect what people leave out on the streets. Those are just a few of the things. I'm sure you've all read it, so you're up to date. But one thing I do want to point out in the graph that I sent you through this morning, that where we are at in our 3-year mark in the Wellington Regional Waste Minimisation Plan is that we are not reducing, we are actually tracking up, not down, and that strategically the changes that we're adopting in this bylaw are a really big part of enabling our plan to start reducing waste. So changing that trajectory. So yes. And some of the other things around controls. So we've got the big part, which is the bylaw, but then we have controls for Wellington City. And basically that will enable us to be able to make changes and not have to consult on them and just notify them. And some examples of that will be, if we get the composting service in place, we can just start to require that people use it. Or the possibility of requiring service providers to use lower size wheelie bins, for an example. I also want to acknowledge the survey. I've brought an amendment around this that we develop a set of actions which will be part of the LTP. But the survey, some key things there that I observed were that 83% of Wellingtonians are concerned about environmental and community impacts. And so I guess it was really great to have someone like Darcy here this morning, talking about his concern and the changes he's put in place. Also that composting, 1 in 3 would pay for the service, even although they said they wouldn't pay very much. But I think it's important to know that people don't expect things to be for free. And also I want to acknowledge that Wellington City Council actually offers a good service, so it's different the way you can read it. And that actually I would like to see us be more competitive with our own business, really getting more people to use the Wellington City Council facility for the many benefits that would bring. Also that 54% of apartments and 45% of townhouses are throwing away their organics because there is no service available. And as we know, organics are 30% of what goes to landfill, nearly 60% of household waste, and that is the biggest opportunity, as Councillor Rush and I spoke on Radio New Zealand yesterday, that we've got, after we take the sludge out, that is the next of the landfill, that is the next best thing for us to target. So strategically, that all makes sense. Do want to note that there'll be a review and officers will come back to council with findings of the review. Is that to be part of this? Yes. Yep, and that there will also be approximately $500,000 of resourcing costs to come forward as a result of what we need to do for the bylaw that will come into our LTP. But fortunately, we can make some money on waste and pay for it that way, which is why I do like this portfolio. So along with the paper, I bring a set of recommendations, all of which I understand are officer supported. And with that, I move the paper. Councillor Condi will be seconding today. And yeah, kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Condi.
I'm going to reserve my right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do your amendments. Yes, please do.
Right, kia ora. But look, I do want to say a big thanks to the staff, Emma and Emily and many others, because this is an amazing piece of work. We have got some really high quality analysis here. Sorry, we'll sort that out later.
Really hard.
Oh, okay, right, okay. They're not.
Sorry, we will adjourn for a couple of minutes to make sure that we have the right wording.
process. We started off developing this bylaw in the last triennium, so thank you very much to everyone who's put such a great amount of work in. The submitters, I particularly want to point out the ERG and then that grouping of organisations, the Sustainability Trust, the Rubbish Trip and so on, who did really, really great submissions, and I was trawling through them this morning, just making sure that I'd extracted all the really good parts. Councillor Foon, thank goodness you're in the role. It's great to have that business perspective, and so we're going to do some more good stuff in waste. And of course, I'd like to thank the awesome waste governance group from the last triennium as well, who really set things in motion. What we did last triennium was measured our waste. That's why we know how much waste we're creating. We created a new plan. We got money in to do some stuff. It's taken longer than I would have liked, but nevertheless, that's where we're at. And this is significant because this is the next step change, really, to make sure that we get to our zero waste goals. So it's a really good day that this is here. Why do we need this? Well, Wellington has the unlucky privilege of being able to call itself one of the worst in terms of waste management in the OECD. We're not impressive. This whole thing around us being clean and green, unfortunately, is not true. And New Zealand as a whole isn't particularly good in terms of its waste management. We have a long way to go. But of course, as people know, the government is going to put up the waste levy, hopefully, next year. There is some measures being looked at in terms of product stewardship and container deposit legislation. So things are changing, and it's really, really exciting. And in terms of some of the things that have come up here are excellent, that we're looking at multi-units and making sure that they have a plan to look at how they manage their waste. We're going to have obviously lots more apartments in the city. Fantastic. More rules around event management. Construction and demolition, as Councillor Fitzsimons has reminded us to, very, very important. It creates an enormous amount of waste globally. It will be good that people know that they will still be able to be bugged by local body candidates at election time. We will still be able to put our material through their letterboxes, but a lot of other junk mail will not. The most important part of this, though, is the waste operator licensing aspect. So just to be clear, Council has lost market share in the waste area since the 1990s. The reason we only have 40% of the waste market is people have decided that they would rather go to a private operator. And what they do is they give out these enormous bins, and we know that we're getting a lot more waste from those households than those who are using our system. And that is a problem. By licensing, it gives us the ability to say, actually, you need to look at recycling, you need to look at composting, and you need to look at the size of your bins. Right, so I'm going to get on to the amendments now, just to really racing through to explain, even though obviously this is such a huge amount of work, so we want to give colleagues the respect of... Okay, I just didn't want to hold you up. Sorry, Cyrus, can you move that down because I can't see all the amendments? Yeah. No, down. So I just want to start from the beginning and just so people understand what it is. Okay, so the first thing you'll note from the recommendations that officers asked us whether we wanted to exempt charity and not-for-profit groups from future application of the waste operator and facility licensing. This is quite a big issue actually because it covers all the second-hand shops as well as someone like Earthlink. But I guess I was convinced by officer advice that that we did need to get that data. Data is king. We need to know what waste and how it's being disposed of. So all I've done, and they were going to do it anyway, but just to make sure that we try and minimise the regulatory burden, and there will be some more work done, and there will be work coming back to Council, so we will be able to consider that issue in more depth. The major problem in the waste area is that we don't know much about, apart from our landfill, what is going where. This is actually really important to me. The multi-unit dwelling service, Councillor Fitzsimons, you got that through last time. We're going to be looking at that as part of our long-term deliberations, but I guess this has been really heightened for me since we've got into engagement with the spatial plan. We're going to have a lot more people living in apartments. So it's really important to me that they are given equitable services. They should not be disadvantaged because they're in a multi-unit, and they shouldn't be disadvantaged because the council and the government hasn't made good enough regulation around providing for good access to collect waste. So all I'm saying here is that it will be a key consideration, that equity, and that also that existing services will be kept in place so that people are not losing a service. And ultimately, I probably do think a rates-funded resource recovery operation would be better, but that's a big call and will require a lot more talking and analysis. I want us to make a stronger commitment as part of developing the waste operator licensing system that we will support in principle mandatory recycling, that people will have to do it. If they want a licence from us to collect waste, they will have to do the recycling as well. I've just noted that composting will be considered at a later point as the infrastructure is developed. Thank you, Nicola. Sorry, can you just... and the introduction of make sure that we make a commitment around the size of receptacles. So if we can just go up, I raised this on Tuesday, that we do, and I wasn't going to write this for the officers, there was a bit of time before council just to put in some wording around our commitment to this circular economy. You'll remember from submissions that people did want us to talk about more than just managing waste, but actually reducing it and getting it into that economy to reduce our waste and also hopefully to make some money as well. And then the whole issue of, this is about mandatory sorting, that does need some sorting is king when it comes to recycling, and again we need some, Nicola, oh sorry, I thought, sorry, I apologise, it was the staff, sorry, I thought you were talking. So that's there. Can I just say that we got these papers on Friday. We've had probably nearly 1,000 pages, if not more, to read since then. So I'm sorry that it was later than I'd like, but actually we were in debate all yesterday for Shelley Bay and getting ready for that debate. And this is really important that we get this right, because in terms of waste, we actually do have a lot of control. So moving those, thank you very much for your attention.
Kia ora. Just being dropped around, is everybody understanding what these amendments are? It might be worth, I'm sure there'll be some councillors who are going to ask for some officer advice on this. So can we have some officer advice on these, please? Yeah. Oh, and who's seconding? Rebecca, is it? Yep.
Through the chair, it starts with Councillor Laurie's motion and then Councillor amendment. So it's the whole thing.
On that, whole thing's here, but we're just talking about from where it says Councillor Kennett.
I'm actually going to remove number 17. This was about just making sure it was easy for waste collectors who collect by bicycle to come at times outside of the thing. But officers and Councillor Foon have assured me that actually, as long as they're collecting from private property, it's not an issue. And maybe if that could just be tidied up in the wording, but that could be done by Councillor Foon, I'm sure. Thank you. Sorry. And I was, yeah. So, at the moment, there are some time limits on when you can collect rubbish, and as part of the submissions process, people came to us and said, well, actually, we need to, if we're on a bike, we need to collect, and it's not going to cause massive traffic congestion at 10 o'clock in the morning, and so they wanted that exemption. But the officer's advice and Laurie's advice is that as long as they're collecting from private property, those time limits don't apply. And saying that, I would just like a little clarification, because I missed that, so other people could too, and just given it was raised by submitters, but that's just a clarification.
What about commercial waste picked up by bike?
Yeah.
Yep. So we're deleting 17, and Tom is now just going to give us some advice on any of the others.
Look, from an officer perspective, since the deletion of 17, we're comfortable with all the amendments, the suggested amendments.
Great, thank you. Thank you, that was easy. Councillor Matthews, you wanting to speak? You're seconding?
I reserve my right.
Great, thank you. Is anyone wanting to speak to this? Councillor Young.
Look, I'm absolutely stunned that this has been worked on since the last training. We have all these amendments spewing out to us this morning. I'm not going to vote for any of these amendments because I think it's really poor governance. We need to have time to think about these things. I think we all accept that waste is a real issue and recycling, and I am a religious recycler, etc., but this is just poor governance, so I'm going to vote against anything in red.
Okay, is anyone else wanting to speak? Councillor Rush.
I mean, I'm not as emphatic as my colleague, Councillor Young, but I do recall earlier in the year we did have a good, robust debate. I got very comfortable with the direction where we're heading and where officers were taking us, and unfortunately, after last night and the last few days, I just find it very difficult to absorb the amendments and into the framework that I had understood where we got to. So for different reasons, perhaps I won't support the amendments. But if you wanted to bring them back, in a couple of days or something like, let the paper lie. It might be something I could support, but I just can't at the moment.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Calvert.
We went out and consulted on the waste minimisation bylaw. We got a lot of good feedback. That's been taken on board. We know we need to do some really good things around about reducing our waste, and I think officers have worked really hard in getting something that's pragmatic, but actually pushes us to achieve better results. These last-minute amendments, I think, it could have unintended consequences, and there's not a sufficient time to consider what those may well be. And we all know if we can put the effort into solving 80% of 20% of the time into solving 80% of the issues, rather than 80% of officers' time trying to solve 20%. That's just an analogy, really, and sort of based on any pure facts. We're sitting here as governors, and we need to follow principles of good governance. So dealing with, it looks, they may only be minor, but there's actually an awful lot of red font here. And so, as Councillor Rush said, be able to give it enough time and consideration at the last minute, given the immense work the officers have put into the paper already, and given that this has been ongoing for quite some time, and just as a reminder, when we did the new legislation, passed the new, I can't even remember what we passed in 2017, but I remember that when we passed it, we had to update it after because the last time we'd updated was 7 years, and in that 7 years we hardly achieved anything. So what we've got to make sure is what we are doing is pragmatic as well, that we actually are going to take those incremental steps forward. And so getting down to this minute detail about noting things and putting right down to plastic types, when who knows what will be in the future, or how much we can actually recycle. But as I said, it comes back to good governance, and it's very easy for us to keep putting more and more work onto our officers, but we never take anything out. And we do know that we had a pretty tough work plan for this current year, and we've had a lot of unknown additional work, especially as we deal with COVID. So I think we just really need to be disciplined ourselves in what we keep asking officers. We want to do more and more. And when we take this piecemeal approach, if we look at the whole picture, what we need to do as a city and where we really need to really focus on. And I think the original tension of the paper was great. That was enabling that focus, but adding this in is not going to, if it is even achievable. So As Councillor Young said, I'm not going to agree to anything in this red because I think we need to show a bit more discipline in how we govern the city.
So we've had 3 speak against. Is there anyone who wants to speak for? Otherwise, we can put the vote. You get your right of reply, but I'm just thinking in the interest of speeding up the debate. Would you like to speak, Councillor Condie? Okay, it's all right. So you're going to speak in support. Then, are you?
Going to speak in support of some of them and against some of them. Sorry, friends. I think it is a struggle, and I sympathise with all of my colleagues who have spoken against it, because I'm looking at these and feeling like some of them I'm still not even sure I understand exactly what it is that they say. That said, I think that there's enough here that I can vote on some of them. I don't have a problem with 3A. That seems pretty straightforward. I'm probably not going to support 7A because I'm concerned about what some of those implications might be in the long term. 8A looks fine, although I'd probably be more comfortable with it if it was something about that we would consider as part of the... Oh, it does say that will be considered, so I'm probably all right with that. The one that I probably still don't have my head around is 18, Councillor Pennant, if you, in your right of reply, wanted to just talk a bit more about that one, just to help me, because I'm tired. I'm just gonna, but I also have a lot of sympathy that it has been a difficult week. It's a really important paper. Councillor Foon, I want to acknowledge that if I'd been bringing the parking policy this week, that would have felt not great to be bringing the parking policy on a day after Shelley Bay. So and to the staff, this is seriously an enormous piece of work that has had lots of people work on it. We've had so much engagement, we've had so much time, and it does feel like we aren't, because of the context of where we are today, that we're perhaps not giving it quite the justice that it deserves. But I want to acknowledge the fact that that doesn't mean that we don't incredibly value and appreciate all of the hard work that's gone in from everybody who's worked on this. So thank you.
Kia ora. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Go to your right of reply.
Look, I have tried to observe the process. I'm not the portfolio leader anymore, so when I got the paper, I started to read it. I did. Oh my God, it was very, very, very long. But it's very impressive that they got so much work done in such a short time after oral submission. So I think we've got a bit of a scheduling issue. And I know, look, it's the end of the year and we're just trying to get through a lot of work. But clearly finishing a debate at 8:30 at night and then being back again at 9 is possibly not ideal. So I thank colleagues for being patient enough to sit through it. But, from my perspective, I have observed the process. I gave direction as portfolio leader last training on what the bylaw might look like, but, it is not my job to interfere in that process. And Dr. Richardson is extremely competent in this and doesn't need all my insights. Councillor Rush, look, thank you. You just did say you were okay. I have actually got officer support for these. So let's not... Yeah, and look, and I'm sorry. It is actually quite complicated, and just because I've been a bit involved in it, it doesn't seem so complicated to me, so I'm sorry about that. We did go up for consultation, Councillor Calvert, which is why I went back and looked at the consultation to make sure that we'd covered all the excellent points. They were so good, these submissions. They were really, really good, and they were consistent about go further, you need to do more, you need to talk about the circular economy, don't talk so much about waste management, talk about reuse and all those really good things which we do agree with. I think that 80% of the problem probably actually is our attitude to resource use, but that will take time. But I also am convinced that when we provide the right kind of infrastructure for people, they will do the right thing. And that's why, just again, why I brought the sludge work forward. If that had been left to 8 or 9, well, this would be a disaster because we wouldn't be able to make progress on our waste management. This is incremental steps, Councillor Calvert, through the chair. This is not revolutionary. Even just getting this bylaw through and then starting to consult with the waste operators is going to take time. I'd remind you that Canterbury has had a 3-bin waste service for a decade. We are not leading the charge. In fact, even if Hamilton's got 4 bins, it's kind of getting a bit embarrassing that we're not actually doing that well in the waste minimisation space, although we have extremely competent officers who do a very good job of running the landfill. This is not minute detail. Also, I'd just like to make the point, this is really about changing the conversation to talking about the circular economy, about making sure there is equity for people living in multi-use apartments. So Councillor Condi, sorry if I didn't explain it really clearly, but just given so many people are going to be living in apartments, I do think it would be remiss of us not to take that into account. Yes, there will be some implications, and they're likely to be significant, but also I don't want thousands of people living in apartments and then chucking all their rubbish and filling up our landfill. And look, sometimes, just remember, for apartments, you will need a different solution to what you might have in the suburbs. So, and that's what the point of the waste trial is to look at some of those. Look, sorry, 18 was actually, I took that on from Councillor Loon. So this was just about getting some more information around mandatory recycling. Right, and Councillor Fitzsimons is telling me to hurry up. So that is all. Thank you very much, colleagues, for the supportive comments. I'm very, very grateful.
Let's vote.
So just these are my amendments, just only my amendments, because
we're just doing the amendments at the moment.
Yeah, my ones, and then Laurie's ones have been incorporated.
So we're going to vote on Councillor Pennett's ones as a block, all of the amendments.
I'm sorry, but
do you
want to take 7A separately?
7A separately, so everything except 7A.
Okay, and can we record as a division?
Yeah, we'll record it as a division.
Not that I want to be divisive.
So we're doing all of them except 7A, and then we'll do 7A after. Oh my God. This is stretching our brains. We're doing okay.
We all need to go for a
Kia
sleep.
kaha koutou.
Have a nap. Oh, I probably should have. I thought I realised
Right, so that's carried. And then we'll vote on 7A.
I voted wrong.
Yeah, you can repress it.
Press your button again. Yeah. Not that we want to press anyone's button.
It's carried. All right, thank you. And then we will go back to the substantive. Is anyone else wanting to speak to the substantive? Councillor Rush.
I'll just say something. Obviously, I'm supportive, but we talk about the circular economy and we talk about doing things in the waste space. And the reality is, it's a bit like banning of upstream oil and gas exploration, which I didn't support, but we really need to be looking at the upstream end of this and making sure, like Councillor Foon, you'll be pleased to know that after representations, Whoop now take their plastic stuff back. So we need to be focusing on that as the next step, and for it to be the sustainable solution going forward. But otherwise, I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert.
So I am not. I've noticed there's a couple of amendments, regardless of officer support, by Councillor Foon. I think it was numbers 14 and 15, and some additional bits added in number 4. I will support up to number 13. I won't support 14 and 15. Again, it's just noting something. It's not actually asking anything, and I'm not sure what value this actually adds other than a feel-good aspect. And look, I don't think you could say in number 15 that officers will add into the LTP. It's not that you can't do that. We have to go out with a consultation document. It would have to be the draft LTP, because we need the public to have a say on what we're proposing. So we can't. It's not. It wasn't there. Again, this is a problem with the last-minute amendments. So look, so I'm not going to, because the fact that 14, 15 don't add anything to it, and we need to show some discipline, as I've been saying in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to make sure that I reiterate that it's okay today that we're dealing with this way. It has been a busy week. We have had a lot going on, and I don't want people to feel that they can't bring things that they want to bring. I know it's a bit frustrating for some people, but still okay. So I think we're over to right of reply now. Cool, thank you.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge the massive impact that, in part of the outcomes of this bylaw, that the reduction of construction and demolition will be something that we really want to impact here. Apparently, over 500,000 tonnes per annum, whereas at our own landfill it's 100,000 tonnes per annum. Thank you for all your patience today, and I just want to make sure that our team who have worked really hard on this know that we really are supportive of all the work that has gone into it. And please accept our apologies for how tired we are. I also just want to acknowledge Councillor Rush, because I did not want to give you a 1 hour rendition of where waste is at this today, but we are working upstream, and it is part of our strategy to work with the government on this. And so that's all in the Wellington Regional Waste Minimisation Plan. I haven't got my copy here today, but I'd love to share it with you. And I would love to give councillors a talk about waste at some time when you're all ready to have a little hooey about where we're at with that. But this is part of the strategic plan to reduce waste. Just talking about some of the I think someone said, I feel like I'm doing the mayor, a pragmatic approach. The amendments that have been brought are about a pragmatic approach to minimising waste in our landfill. Our landfill is filling up, and it's going to cost us $20 million to make a new one. That is going in the LTP. Do you want to put that in, or do you want affordable housing? Well, actually, that's what we'll be deciding. All of the amendments are about following the plan and helping it work. So the whole picture is outlined in the plan, which as I have invited Councillor Rush, I would love to take you all on that journey. But if you will take some time to look at the attached document, you can see what Wellington City Council is doing in its strategic alignment to that plan. And so once again, I just want to acknowledge our team and their amazing work, and I acknowledge it is a complex area. So I invite you to joining me in supporting moving the adoption of the paper and all the amendments. And I look forward to, ticking this off and saying thank you to all the team. Kia ora.
We're just going to do, Cyrus is just going to talk to us about clarifying some of the things that replace from Councillor Pennett's amendments. So,
through you, Madam Chair.
But thank you.
So, 3, the original motion, the original recommendation was replaced by Councillor Pennett's amendment. And the other one is 7 and 8. And then Councillor Pennett had 2 further amendments, which are 16 and 17. Not on the paper, on the...
So we're going to have to do some...
taking it separately.
Taking some separately.
So let's work through it methodically. I imagine that some councillors are going to want to take number 3 separately.
See what number 3 is?
That have got changes. There are some here that people have indicated earlier that they wanted to as well.
Yep.
Okay, so anything that's got some red in it, was that how you work it out? We'll take separately. So, I mean, the other thing we could do is just work our way down. So we can do 1 and 2 together. I think it's just going to be easy to work down the list. Then we just know we've covered it off. So we'll do 1 and 2, and then we'll just work our way down and clump them where we can. Yep, we'll just give officers time.
Yeah. I think I'm happy to vote against. 3 and 4. Where you look at it, they were only noting. We weren't agreeing to anything or.
So you're happy to vote for those?
No. Well, no. We'll just vote against everything that's red.
Well, no, because that still doesn't help officers try and figure out each, because they've still got to take it all separately.
Yeah, but if you look at 3 and 4, they're only noting ones. They're not actually
You can vote
agreeing
for them.
that's any action. No, but it's just the principle. But I'm just saying it's not a biggie.
Could I just say that
If you're
3
going to go
should
with my
state
feed, because the
note
officers still
the
have to figure out
submission,
what the number
not
of red ones are.
that the
it's-
submission.
Yeah, makes sense. 1 and 2.
Yeah, can I just ask that we can see on the screen the
Number 1 and 2.
number 1 and
Yep,
2,
so
which
we'll
is
just
what
make sure
we're
we can
voting
see.
on right now. Thank
So
you
1
so
and 2, and we'll just wait for voting to be open. 1 and 2. Thank you.
3 doesn't make sense. The syntax is wrong.
Yeah.
I don't care what we're voting on. I'm just pointing out.
No.
Is anyone going to fix it?
There has been a right of reply, which means we don't enter into any more debate if you don't want
I'm not having debate. I'm just, you guys are having a good old chinwag. I'm just contributing that it doesn't make sense. It should say note the submission, not note that the submission. It's pretty simple.
After we start the vote, we don't talk about it. We just get on with doing it.
Disgraceful thing to
Simon,
say.
can you vote? No. Sean, it is actually in standing orders. Once the right of reply, we don't enter into debate. We get on and vote.
I was just trying to correct some grammar. That's all. Just trying to be helpful.
Well, it's,
Let everyone else talk in chinwag. Tried to make that correction before the vote started.
okay, that's been carried. Right now, we will look at the list and we will do 3 and 4 together, because I think the vote between those two will be consistent. Yep. So 3 and 4.
Thank you, Cyrus.
No ego here. Now we'll do number 5, and what about? Let's see the next one. We might as well do 5 and 6 together. Your microphone's on. Once this. Voting's open. Carried. So we're up to 7 and 8. Are people okay with taking those together? Yep. Okay. Open. Sperry. That has carried. And then and then 9 through till 12. 13. 13's fine, isn't it? Seriously, that has to happen, yeah. Through to 13. We're nearly there. All right, that's carried. And now we're up to number 14 and 15, 16 and 17. Let's do them together. Does that work for everybody? It's the new 17 because so all the last ones together. Sorry, that has carried? Okay, so that was the last one on that, wasn't it? Thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to, are people okay to move straight into item 3.2? Item 3.2, thank you, is the e-scooter licensing. So, it's meant to be the Deputy Mayor. Oh, you're doing it, okay. Thank you, Councillor Condi. You can introduce the report.
All right, kia ora team. I'm going to try and make this short and sweet. This paper is actually pretty straightforward. It's essentially just decoupling from the trading in public places policy, which is going to be delayed, So we need to actually renew the licences for the e-scooters before that policy is going to be finished. So the point of this paper is just to decouple the two of them so we can renew the licences before the end of the year, and the trading in public places policy will continue into the next year. When we had our question and answers, there was quite a lot of debate about the price, and I just want to draw your attention to the screen, recommendation 4, because it actually turned out that the reason the paper didn't have a lot of information about price in it is that it wasn't actually intended to be an agree recommendation. It was intended to be a note recommendation because it's actually an operational decision to set the price. So, you know, with that in mind, I was really quite comfortable with that. The officers have updated that error and changed it to note. And also they've just added there that there'll be a minimum price of 10 cents per trip going forward, so that's just to give us a bit more information about how that's going. So having spoken to officers, I was really comforted by that. I think, you know, there wasn't enough information in the paper for us to agree to that, but there's more than enough information in the paper for us to note it. And I think it's appropriate that this is an operational decision that's happening at that level. I don't want to belabor the point, so I'll just wrap it up there, and the Deputy Mayor's back, so I'm sure she would like to second it. Right, Deputy Mayor Free, would you like to second this?
I think there's too much need to say anything because I've come in to the tail end of what Jenny's introduction, and I think she's done an excellent job.
Would you like to speak, Councillor Pennant?
Just really briefly. Look, I'm not going to vote against this, but I guess I just want to acknowledge the concerns from some in our community about scooters. Okay, we haven't resolved all the issues for you know, from the disabled community, older people, people who just might feel a bit vulnerable, and it's just an incentive definitely to get on with and keep going with the wonderful work Councillor Free is leading in cycleways so that we can separate them out, which is definitely my ultimate goal. So I guess that might be seen as we're just sort of we're just agreeing now, but I think probably the horse is definitely bolted there here. So really what will be interested to look at in the future is how we manage them a bit better, because I just fundamentally don't think they belong on the footpath. So that's about creating other space. But kia ora, thank you very much, and I think this is a very competent paper.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Young?
Briefly, look, I hate the bloody things. They're silent. At some stage, they will become deadly, and I just hope it's not me or anyone who I care about, which is quite a long list, believe it or not. And so the thing is that, you know, I'd dearly like to vote against this, except it doesn't achieve anything except ask for officers to do more policy work, and the officers are, you know, groaning under the length of policy work. So, like my fellow ward councillor Pennant, colleague, I missed out the colleague. I will vote for this, but it's just that I'd really love them, you know, a pox on e-scooters.
Councillor Rush.
Can I just ask for some officer advice? Just why is recommendation 4 notes that there's a minimum price? Why are we determining what the price might be as opposed to the operators?
Do you want to come and answer that? Hugh will answer that, thanks.
So that minimum price is actually the fee that we charge as the minimum price. It's not the minimum price to use a scooter. Yeah. So, and that was to give the community some assurance that we will have full cost recovery. Gotcha. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Deputy Mayor Free.
So now that I've composed myself, I just wanted to say that I think the Ruru racks are a really good way forward, and they have addressed some of our concerns about parking, but I'd really like to see them in more spaces and maybe not quite as many as 7 at a time, because I think what we've done at the moment of that trial has been a good start, but we can definitely refine that. And it's good to see that through this charging proposal, we should actually raise slightly more money than we've raised in the past, because there's no doubt about it, we will need to provide some infrastructure so that we can keep this whole scheme operating in a way that's sort of acceptable. Oh, no, I'm happy with it.
I'm just going to speak quickly. I wasn't actually going to, but I have observed and been told that the amount of private e-scooter use has gone up. And so I actually really do support this because I prefer the fact that we have publicly available e-scooters that we can put controls over. So actually, well, but the thing is they are also on the footpath when they're private ones and we can't control that, and that is also a problem. So what my perspective is, I would rather that we are providing a good quality service in the city that means that people have access to what they need and don't need to go and buy their own, which means it's then much harder for us to try and make rules that work. So I definitely do support this, and over to Councillor Fitzsimons. Okay, that looks like that's so right of reply, Councillor Condé.
Very quickly. Just acknowledge Councillor Day, that's how tired I am. I actually did think about your name there for a moment. Coming on my train this morning, there were 2 people with their own private e-scooters, and bringing them into the city, which is great because that's, a really carbon-friendly way to travel, but I think it is really important that we provide those options in the city. And just to acknowledge the very genuine concerns that we have about how these are affecting our city and safety, particularly for pedestrians, and that this is a full cost recovery model. So, and the great thing about moving to a fee like this that's per trip taken is that we actually, if the costs go up during the term because we need to provide more infrastructure, we can adjust the price per trip up to help us cover those additional costs for additional infrastructure. So it actually is going to be more flexible, which is great. It's going to give us the ability to collect the money that we need to help pay for the infrastructure that we need to address some of the concerns that we have in our community, which we're really committed to doing. So thank you all. Let's vote.
Kia ora, I can see people poised, ready to vote, so this is good. It is now. Councillor Rush, is yours not working? Oh, is it slow? So that's carried, and ko mutuiti nei hui, i tuiti karakia mutunga. Unu hia ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū. Koe ara e rongo, whakaaeria ake ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā, ua wātia. Well, I hope everybody has a good afternoon, and I also just want to do a big shout out to the FARS committee who have another meeting to go.